If you found this, something has already shifted. Not outwardly, not in a way that demands proof or validation, but inwardly, at the level where attention loosens its grip and awareness begins to widen. This is not coincidence. It is resonance. You did not arrive here by searching harder or wanting more. You arrived because a subtle alignment was already in motion, and this moment simply mirrors that fact back to you. What most people call activation is often imagined as an event in the future, a threshold to be crossed, a switch to be flipped. But what is actually happening is quieter. It feels less like becoming something new and more like releasing something old. A rigidity softens. An identity relaxes. The sense of being a small figure pushing against a vast external world begins to dissolve. Nothing dramatic needs to happen for this to be real. In fact, the more dramatic it feels, the more it tends to belong to the mind rather than to recognition. 5D activation, in its true sense, is not an upgrade being installed. It is a remembering. A recognition that awareness has always been primary, and that reality has always been responsive. When this recognition begins to surface, urgency fades. The pressure to chase, fix, or prove quietly drops away. You may notice that you are less interested in forcing outcomes and more interested in how things feel when you allow them to unfold. This is not passivity. It is intelligence returning to its natural state. The reason this message feels different is not because it contains special information. It is because it meets you where you already are. Recognition always arrives before explanation. The body knows before the mind agrees. The field responds before language forms. That is why trying to analyze why you are here misses the point entirely. You are here because your attention was available, because your inner state was receptive enough to notice a signal that others overlook. This is how shifts actually happen. Not through effort, but through coherence. Not through striving, but through allowing. When identity loosens its grip on control, awareness expands, and reality responds accordingly. This response is not a reward. It is a reflection. The mirror does not decide what to show you. It simply reflects what stands before it. If you feel a sense of calm rather than excitement, of clarity rather than anticipation, that is not a lack of progress. It is a sign that something fundamental has already changed. The need to seek has begun to collapse. The compulsion to become has started to fade. What remains is a quiet readiness, not for action, but for recognition. This changes everything, because creation does not happen in the future. It happens now, through the state you are inhabiting in this moment. You are not waiting for alignment. Alignment is recognizing itself through you. And that recognition is already active, otherwise this would have passed you by like noise. If you are aligned with this frequency, subscribe and remain within it. The idea of the 1% has been distorted by hierarchy and fantasy. It has been framed as selection, as destiny, as something granted from outside. But the truth is far simpler and far quieter. The 1% are not chosen. They are unclenched. Their advantage is not knowledge, lineage, or effort. It is a nervous system that is not constantly braced against reality. Most consciousness is occupied by tension. Attention is pulled outward, fragmented by urgency, alerts, expectations, and noise. Reaction becomes the default state. When awareness is always responding, it has no space to notice. And when there is no space, subtle shifts pass by unseen. This is why so few recognize change while it is happening. Not because it is hidden, but because they are full. The 1% are simply less full. Their inner world has room. They are not perpetually gripping their thoughts, their emotions, or their identity. This unclenching allows perception to widen. Signals that would normally be drowned out by mental chatter can now be felt. Not analyzed. Felt. This is not a moral achievement. It is a physiological and perceptual condition. When the nervous system is constantly activated, it seeks certainty, stimulation, and control. It confuses intensity with importance. In that state, awareness collapses inward, looping through familiar patterns. Subtle shifts in frequency feel irrelevant or invisible. But when reactivity softens, awareness expands. The field becomes perceptible again. Not as something mystical, but as a quiet responsiveness beneath appearances. This is why the 1% often do not look special from the outside. They are not necessarily louder, more confident, or more certain. If anything, they appear calmer, less rushed, less compelled to react. Their attention is not constantly hijacked by external stimuli. They can sit with silence without needing to fill it. That capacity alone changes everything. Freedom from constant stimulation is not about withdrawal or isolation. It is about sovereignty of attention. When attention is no longer endlessly pulled outward, it naturally returns to the present moment. And in the present moment, awareness begins to notice how reality responds to state, not to effort. This noticing is the beginning of recognition. The 1% are not immune to emotion, stress, or challenge. They simply do not mistake those experiences for identity. They feel without immediately reacting. They pause without collapsing. That pause is where perception reorganizes. That space is where alignment becomes visible. This is why you cannot force yourself into this group. Trying to become the 1% tightens the grip. It adds another layer of striving. Recognition does not respond to force. It responds to openness. The more you unclench, the more you notice. The more you notice, the less effort is required. This is not about being better. It is about being available. Awareness cannot enter a space that is already crowded. The shift happens when something softens, when the constant need to manage reality relaxes. Then, without announcement, perception changes. If this lands without resistance, if it feels obvious rather than impressive, that is the signal. Like the video now as a confirmation that this recognition has landed. Recognition always arrives before language. Before the mind forms a sentence, before meaning is assigned, before explanation feels necessary, something in awareness already knows. The body senses it first. A subtle release. A quiet clarity. A feeling of alignment that does not ask for permission from logic. This is not intuition as a dramatic signal. It is perception returning to its natural sensitivity. The mind is designed to label, compare, and structure experience after it occurs. But recognition happens prior to all of that. It is immediate and wordless. That is why trying to think your way into alignment never works. By the time the mind gets involved, the signal has already passed through awareness. Language follows recognition. It never leads it. This is also why effort-based seeking begins to collapse at this stage. Seeking assumes that something is missing and must be acquired. Recognition reveals that nothing was missing in the first place. The moment awareness senses alignment, the drive to search weakens. Questions that once felt urgent lose their charge. Not because answers were found, but because the need for answers dissolves. The body understands coherence instinctively. When alignment is present, the nervous system softens. Breath deepens. Attention steadies. There is less internal noise. These are not emotional highs. They are signs of reduced resistance. Awareness is no longer straining against itself. That ease is the marker. It does not announce itself loudly because it does not need to. Most people miss this because they are trained to trust explanation over experience. They wait for language to validate what they feel. But recognition does not wait to be named. It simply is. And the more you try to capture it with concepts, the more it slips through the mind's grasp. This is why overthinking feels so frustrating during shifts. It is an outdated tool being applied to a new mode of perception. When recognition begins to lead, effort feels unnatural. Techniques that once felt empowering start to feel heavy. Not because they were wrong, but because they belong to a different orientation. Forcing awareness to arrive somewhere it already is creates tension. That tension is the signal that seeking has outlived its usefulness. This does not mean understanding has no place. It means understanding must follow, not precede. Language can integrate recognition, stabilize it, and communicate it, but it cannot generate it. Trying to reverse that order creates confusion. Calm clarity emerges when the order is respected. You may notice that certain explanations suddenly feel obvious, almost boring. This is a sign that recognition has already integrated them. The mind is catching up to something awareness has known for a while. This is not regression. It is alignment settling in. This is also why explanations arrive only after readiness. Information does not awaken recognition. Recognition draws in the information that matches it. That is the sequence. Awareness opens, then language organizes. Never the other way around. When you stop demanding that the mind lead, perception sharpens. You begin to trust the quiet signals again. The subtle sense of rightness. The ease that has no story attached to it. This is not passive. It is precise. It is awareness remembering how it naturally operates. Recognition precedes explanation because reality responds to state, not to words. And once that is seen, seeking relaxes into noticing. The shift has already occurred. The mind is simply learning how to describe it. Before anything can change in experience, orientation must change in perception. Most people move through life assuming they exist inside reality, as if they are a small point navigating a vast external world. From that position, effort feels necessary, control feels protective, and force feels justified. But this orientation is inverted. You are not inside reality. Reality is responding to you. This is not philosophy. It is perception corrected. The moment awareness recognizes itself as the observer rather than the object, causality reorganizes. Reality does not respond to action alone. It responds to coherence. It mirrors the state from which perception is operating. This is why two people can take the same actions and experience completely different outcomes. The difference is not behavior. It is identity. When identity is contracted, perception narrows. Reality appears rigid, slow, and resistant. When identity loosens, perception widens. Reality appears fluid, responsive, and synchronized. Nothing external has changed. The observer has. And because perception is causal, the field reorganizes accordingly. Force belongs to the assumption of separation. It assumes reality must be pushed, persuaded, or overcome. But force only amplifies resistance because it confirms the belief that reality is other. Coherence, on the other hand, requires no pushing. It is alignment without effort. When perception is steady and undistorted, reality reflects that steadiness back with precision. This is why identity is the organizing principle. Identity is not the story you tell about yourself. It is the position from which you are perceiving. It is the frequency your awareness is stabilized in. From that frequency, certain outcomes become natural and others fade out. Not because they are denied, but because they no longer match. When you understand this, responsibility shifts. You stop trying to micromanage outcomes and begin noticing your state. Not to control it, but to allow it to settle. The more coherent the observer, the less manipulation is required. Reality fills in the details on its own. This is also why recognition feels relieving. The pressure to do more dissolves. You realize that your primary role is not to force reality into shape, but to maintain clarity of perception. From that clarity, responses emerge effortlessly. Timing improves. Friction decreases. Not because you earned it, but because resistance is no longer being projected. The mind often resists this reversal because it feels like a loss of control. But what is actually lost is distortion. Control was never power. It was compensation for misalignment. When alignment is present, control becomes unnecessary. Notice how different this feels from traditional causality. There is no chase here. No demand. No urgency. There is simply responsiveness. Reality listens to coherence the way an instrument responds to tuning. The more precise the tuning, the clearer the sound. This is the foundation everything else rests on. Without this correction, techniques become strain. With it, simplicity returns. You are not trying to influence reality from the outside. You are allowing it to respond from within. Comment with the words, "I am ready," to anchor this timeline. Emotion was never meant to be overcome, silenced, or fixed. That misunderstanding alone has created more resistance than any external circumstance. Emotion is not an obstacle on the path. It is the interface. It is the way the field communicates with awareness in real time. Before the mind forms a judgment, before a story appears, emotion registers alignment or misalignment instantly. Expansion feels open, spacious, light. Contraction feels tight, heavy, compressed. These sensations are not rewards or punishments. They are signals. Clear, immediate, precise. The moment emotion is treated as feedback rather than a problem, confusion begins to dissolve. In a distorted orientation, emotion is managed. Suppressed. Justified. Escaped. But all of those strategies assume emotion is something that happens to you. In truth, emotion is something that moves through you, reflecting your current relationship with the field. When alignment is present, the signal is ease. When alignment drifts, the signal is tension. Nothing has gone wrong. Information has arrived. Most people are taught to override contraction. To push through discomfort. To force positivity. But contraction is not failure. It is guidance. It indicates that perception has narrowed, that identity has tightened, that resistance is active somewhere in awareness. Ignoring this signal does not restore alignment. It amplifies distortion. Expansion, likewise, is not something to chase. It cannot be manufactured by thought. It emerges naturally when resistance drops. When perception widens. When control loosens. That is why emotional coherence matters more than emotional intensity. A calm, steady state carries far more clarity than a heightened one. Coherence does not mean feeling good all the time. It means feeling honestly, without distortion. Allowing emotion to register without immediately reacting to it. When emotion is allowed to complete its signal, it resolves on its own. When it is resisted, it loops. This is how guidance actually works. Not as commands from outside, but as sensations from within. Expansion indicates that awareness is moving in harmony with itself. Contraction indicates misalignment, not as a judgment, but as a course correction. The field is always responding. Emotion is how you hear it. When you stop trying to fix emotion, you gain access to its intelligence. You begin to notice subtler signals. Smaller shifts. Quieter confirmations. The need for dramatic signs fades because sensitivity increases. Awareness becomes fluent in its own language again. This is why forcing emotional states never works long-term. Forcing creates incoherence. It layers intention on top of resistance. Allowing, on the other hand, restores alignment without effort. You feel what is present, and the signal completes. Nothing extra is required. Emotional coherence is guidance because it reflects your current vibrational position accurately. Not where you should be. Not where you want to be. Where you are. From that honesty, alignment becomes available again. Reality responds to that coherence immediately, without delay. The moment emotion is trusted instead of feared, the relationship with reality changes. You stop asking what to do and start noticing how it feels. Not as a strategy, but as awareness listening to itself. This is the interface. It has always been active. The only shift required is recognition. Effort once worked because consciousness was oriented around force. In a contracted state of awareness, reality appeared solid, external, and slow to respond. From that orientation, pushing made sense. Willpower created movement. Discipline produced results. Action felt causal because identity was anchored in separation. The harder you pushed, the more reality seemed to comply. But that was never the true mechanism. It was a temporary alignment between effort and belief. When you believed reality required force, force appeared effective. Reality was mirroring the assumption, not rewarding the struggle. As awareness begins to shift, that mirror changes. Now, the same effort feels heavy. Techniques that once produced momentum create friction. Manifestation practices feel strained. Visualization feels hollow. Not because something is wrong, but because the operating system has changed. You are no longer interfacing with reality through force. You are interfacing through resonance. In a more coherent state, effort introduces distortion. It tightens identity. It signals mistrust. It says reality must be controlled rather than responded to. And reality mirrors that mistrust back as resistance. What once felt empowering now feels exhausting because it no longer matches the state you are occupying. This is where frustration appears. Not as punishment, but as information. Frustration is the signal that an old strategy is being applied to a new level of awareness. It is the sensation of misalignment between method and state. The mind interprets this as failure. Awareness recognizes it as transition. In 3D causality, action precedes outcome. In 5D resonance, state precedes response. When identity shifts even slightly, the entire feedback loop reorganizes. The system stops responding to force and starts responding to coherence. Effort becomes noise. Allowing becomes clarity. This is why doing more no longer helps. It is not because you lack discipline. It is because discipline is no longer the lever. The lever has moved inward. The moment you try to push from the old position, resistance appears immediately. That resistance is not blocking you. It is redirecting you. Many people mistake this phase for regression. They assume they have lost their power. In truth, they have outgrown a tool. Power was never in effort. It was in alignment. Effort was simply the visible expression of alignment at a denser level of perception. Now, alignment expresses itself differently. Through steadiness. Through clarity. Through reduced urgency. Reality responds faster, but only when distortion is absent. Effort adds distortion. It overlays intention on top of tension. Resonance removes tension and lets intention organize itself. This is the collapse of striving. It feels uncomfortable because the mind equates effort with worthiness. Letting go of effort can feel like doing nothing. But nothing is being lost. Control is being released so responsiveness can emerge. When frustration arises, notice it without reacting. It is not asking you to try harder. It is asking you to soften. To stop pushing against a door that is meant to open inward. The moment you stop forcing, movement returns. This is the transition point. Where force-based causality ends and resonance-based response begins. The discomfort is temporary. The clarity that follows is permanent. There comes a phase where what once felt stable begins to loosen. Old strategies no longer provide the same sense of certainty. Familiar ways of managing life start to wobble. This is not collapse. It is destabilization in service of reorientation. A necessary phase where control is revealed for what it actually is. Control is not a creative force. It is a survival reflex. It emerges when identity feels threatened, when uncertainty feels unsafe, when awareness believes it must protect itself from an external world. In that state, control feels intelligent. It feels responsible. But its function is not creation. Its function is defense. When control is active, perception contracts. Attention narrows to risk, prediction, and outcome management. The body tightens. Breath shortens. Awareness becomes preoccupied with maintaining a specific configuration of reality. This contraction is subtle, but it is decisive. It signals mistrust in the field's responsiveness. Creation requires openness. Control closes. Creation allows. Control braces. This is why control generates resistance. It assumes opposition. And reality mirrors that assumption back as friction, delay, or complication. Not as punishment, but as confirmation of the state being projected. Control is rooted in identity protection. It is the reflex of a self that believes it can be diminished, disrupted, or lost. From that belief, effort becomes compulsory and uncertainty becomes intolerable. But when awareness begins to recognize itself as stable, control loses its justification. And that is when it becomes visible. This visibility can feel unsettling. Control has been mistaken for competence for a long time. Letting it soften can feel like losing ground. But what is actually happening is that distortion is being exposed. The effort to hold reality in place was never creative. It was compensatory. Control does not trust timing. It does not trust coherence. It does not trust the present moment. It tries to manage outcomes because it cannot feel the field responding. But the field cannot respond to contraction. It responds to clarity. It responds to openness. It responds to alignment. This is why control feels exhausting. It requires constant vigilance. Constant adjustment. Constant mental activity. Creation, by contrast, feels simple. Not passive, but unstrained. It emerges when perception is steady enough to let reality organize itself. As awareness shifts, control becomes less effective and more uncomfortable. This is not a problem to solve. It is a signal that identity is no longer anchored in survival. The reflex fires, but it no longer fits. The tension you feel is not danger. It is mismatch. The moment control loosens, even slightly, something else becomes available. Space. Responsiveness. A sense that you do not need to hold everything together. Reality begins to meet you halfway, not because you surrendered, but because you stopped resisting. This movement is not about rejecting control. It is about seeing it clearly. Once seen, it no longer dominates. It can rest. And in that rest, creation becomes possible again, not through force, but through coherence returning to its natural state. Allowing is often misunderstood because it is confused with disengagement. With giving up. With doing nothing and hoping something changes. But allowing is not the absence of intelligence. It is the refinement of it. It is the state of least distortion and the highest accuracy available to awareness. Distortion is created when perception is strained. When identity is braced. When attention is divided between what is happening and what should be happening. Control adds layers. It overlays expectation on top of observation. Allowing removes those layers. It lets perception meet reality directly, without interference. This is why allowing sharpens alignment rather than weakening it. When resistance drops, sensitivity increases. Awareness becomes precise. It notices subtle shifts in timing, tone, and direction that are invisible when effort dominates. Relaxation is not dullness. It is clarity without noise. Giving up feels heavy. Allowing feels light. Giving up carries resignation. Allowing carries trust. The difference is not conceptual. It is felt. In allowing, there is still presence. Still engagement. Still responsiveness. What disappears is the need to force outcomes into predetermined shapes. When awareness allows, it does not withdraw from creation. It steps into a more accurate role. Instead of dictating, it listens. Instead of pushing, it adjusts. Reality responds to that adjustment instantly, because there is no longer internal opposition. This is why allowing feels counterintuitive at first. The mind equates effort with effectiveness. It assumes relaxation means losing control. But control was never accuracy. It was approximation under tension. Allowing removes the tension, and with it, the approximation. What remains is direct response. Precision emerges when perception is steady. When the nervous system is calm. When identity is not defending itself. In that state, choices become obvious. Not because they are analyzed, but because they are felt. Action arises naturally from alignment rather than obligation. Allowing also restores timing. Force disrupts timing because it imposes urgency. Allowing respects rhythm. It waits without stagnating. It moves without rushing. This is not patience as endurance. It is patience as attunement. The right moment becomes perceptible because awareness is not racing ahead of itself. Nothing is being delayed when you allow. Delays are created by resistance, not by openness. When distortion drops, response accelerates. Reality does not need to be pushed to respond. It needs space to respond accurately. This is the paradox. The more you relax, the more effective you become. Not because relaxation is a technique, but because it removes interference. You stop sending mixed signals. Identity stops oscillating between trust and doubt. The field receives a clear instruction. Allowing is not passive because it requires presence. It requires awareness to remain here, now, without fleeing into control or projection. That presence is active. It is engaged. It is precise. When allowing stabilizes, creation feels effortless. Not because nothing is happening, but because nothing is being resisted. Reality responds smoothly to a steady observer. Alignment sharpens. Responsiveness increases. And what once required force now unfolds naturally, guided by clarity rather than control. Contrast is often misinterpreted as failure. As regression. As a sign that alignment has been lost. But contrast is not punishment. It is calibration. It is the mechanism through which clarity sharpens and alignment becomes precise. When awareness begins to expand, sensitivity increases. You start to feel more. Notice more. Subtle misalignments that once went unnoticed now register clearly. This can feel like things are getting worse, when in fact perception is becoming more accurate. Contrast appears not because something has gone wrong, but because awareness is now capable of detecting finer differences. Contrast shows you what you are not aligned with by letting you feel it fully. Not to trap you there, but to refine your position. Just as an instrument is tuned by hearing dissonance, consciousness refines itself through contrast. Without it, alignment would remain vague. Desire would remain unfocused. Recognition would lack precision. This is where spiritual bypassing often appears. The attempt to avoid discomfort by labeling everything as positive. By denying contraction. By forcing expansion. But bypassing contrast does not restore alignment. It delays it. It skips the information necessary for calibration. Contrast does not ask you to fix it. It asks you to feel it without distortion. Without story. Without resistance. The moment contrast is allowed to register cleanly, it completes its function. Clarity emerges naturally. Alignment sharpens without effort. When contrast is resisted, it loops. When it is dramatized, it expands. When it is judged, it sticks. But when it is observed, it resolves. This is the difference between suffering and refinement. Suffering is contrast plus resistance. Refinement is contrast plus awareness. In periods of dissonance, the mind often searches for meaning. It asks why this is happening. What lesson must be learned? What mistake was made? But contrast does not require interpretation. It requires presence. The body already understands what the mind is trying to analyze. This is why contrast often arrives after allowing. Once control loosens, suppressed signals surface. This is not regression. It is backlog clearing. Awareness is catching up to itself. Old distortions are becoming visible because they can now be released. Stability comes from understanding this. When contrast is expected rather than feared, it loses its power to destabilize. You stop interpreting discomfort as a threat. You recognize it as feedback. As refinement in motion. Contrast also prevents complacency. It keeps alignment dynamic rather than static. It ensures that awareness does not settle into false certainty. Each encounter with dissonance sharpens discernment. You become clearer about what resonates and what does not. Not intellectually, but experientially. Nothing here is personal. Contrast is not judging you. It is not testing you. It is not withholding anything. It is simply showing you where coherence is present and where it is not. From that information, alignment adjusts itself. When you stop trying to escape contrast, it stops feeling like an obstacle. It becomes a guide. A calibrating signal that keeps perception honest and responsive. This is how refinement happens without struggle. Contrast is not the opposite of alignment. It is part of it. And once this is seen, periods of dissonance no longer derail you. They steady you. They clarify you. They return you to precision, where awareness can once again move forward without distortion. As awareness expands, perception widens beyond linear progression. Life no longer feels like a single path you must walk correctly. It begins to feel like a field of possibilities responding to who you are being now. This is where the idea of timelines becomes relevant, not as fantasy, but as a precise description of how reality organizes itself around identity. Timelines are not earned. They are not rewards for effort, morality, or endurance. They are matched. Each timeline is a coherent sequence of events that corresponds to a specific vibrational position. When identity stabilizes in a certain state, the matching sequence becomes active. Not because it was chosen consciously, but because it is the only response that fits. Parallel probabilities exist simultaneously, not in distant dimensions, but as potential expressions of the present moment. What differentiates them is not circumstance, but coherence. The version of reality you experience is the one that resonates with your current identity. Shift the identity, and the probability field reorganizes automatically. This is why merit-based thinking breaks down here. The idea that you must deserve a better outcome assumes an external authority assigning results. But reality does not operate on judgment. It operates on resonance. A radio does not earn a station. It tunes to it. The signal you receive is determined by the frequency you are aligned with. Effort tries to force access. Identity determines access. When effort is applied without coherence, it produces friction. When coherence is present, movement appears effortless. This is not because things are handed to you, but because resistance is absent. The path opens because it matches. Timelines also do not require belief to function. They respond to state, not to opinion. You do not need to think about timelines for them to be active. You only need to notice how different versions of life feel available or unavailable depending on your internal position. That availability is not imagined. It is perceptual accuracy. When identity shifts, certain outcomes simply stop making sense. They feel heavy, distant, or irrelevant. Others feel natural, close, almost inevitable. This is timeline matching in real time. Awareness senses which probabilities are coherent before the mind can justify why. This is why trying to jump timelines through visualization alone often fails. Visualization without identity coherence is imagination layered on distortion. It creates longing rather than movement. When identity aligns, visualization becomes unnecessary. The matching timeline asserts itself without effort. There is no hierarchy of timelines. No higher or lower in a moral sense. There is only alignment or misalignment. The moment you stop striving for a better future and stabilize in a clearer present, the future reorganizes on its own. Creation happens now, through state, not through striving. Understanding this removes urgency. You stop racing toward outcomes. You stop measuring progress externally. Instead, attention returns to coherence. To clarity. To how you are inhabiting this moment. From there, the appropriate sequence unfolds naturally. Timelines are not destinations you travel to. They are responses to who you are being. When identity shifts, reality follows. Not later. Immediately. And once this is recognized, the need to earn dissolves. Matching becomes effortless, because it has always been automatic. The present moment is not a slice of time between past and future. It is the only point where reality can respond. Everything else is reference. Memory and anticipation exist as information, but neither has causal power. Creation does not happen yesterday or tomorrow. It happens now, through the state you are occupying in this instant. This is not a call to urgency. It is an invitation to accuracy. Urgency belongs to the future. Regret belongs to the past. Both pull awareness away from the only interface where alignment can register. When attention is anchored in what was or what might be, perception becomes indirect. Reality cannot respond clearly to a signal that is not present. The present moment is where identity is active. Not as a story, but as a state. Who you are being is not decided by your history or your plans. It is decided by how awareness is positioned right now. From that position, timelines are selected, responses emerge, and outcomes organize themselves. Most people misunderstand this and try to use the present moment as a tool. They attempt to focus on now to get something later. That effort reintroduces distortion. The present moment is not a means to an end. It is the end. When awareness rests here without agenda, coherence stabilizes naturally. Past and future are useful only as context. They inform, but they do not act. When awareness clings to them, it loses contact with the field's responsiveness. This is why replaying the past or rehearsing the future feels draining. Attention is invested where no response can occur. The present moment feels different when this is understood. It stops feeling small. It stops feeling like a waiting room. It becomes spacious, alive, and responsive. Not because anything dramatic is happening, but because awareness is no longer split. Creation is subtle. It does not announce itself with force. It reorganizes quietly when resistance drops. That reorganization always begins now. Not because now is special, but because it is real. This also dissolves pressure. There is nothing you need to do with the present moment. There is no requirement to hold it perfectly. Simply noticing where attention is already brings it back. The field responds immediately to that return. When fixation on past and future loosens, time stops feeling like a threat. You stop racing. You stop lagging. You begin to sense timing instead of measuring it. Actions arise when they fit. Silence remains when it is appropriate. Nothing is missed, because nothing is being forced. This is why presence is powerful without being intense. It does not demand effort. It removes interference. Identity stops scattering itself across imagined moments and settles into coherence. From that coherence, reality responds cleanly. You do not need to abandon memory or planning. You only need to stop living there. Let them be tools, not locations. Awareness belongs here. The present moment is not something you enter. You never left it. You only looked away. And the moment attention returns, creation resumes, because it always has. Identity is not the story you tell about yourself. It is the position from which you are perceiving. The story is descriptive. Identity is operative. One explains experience after it happens. The other selects what can happen at all. Most people try to change outcomes by changing narratives. They repeat affirmations. They rewrite beliefs. They visualize different versions of themselves. But these efforts often fail because they operate at the level of language, not identity. The switch is not flipped by words. It is flipped by recognition. Identity functions as a vibrational position. It is the baseline state your awareness consistently returns to. From that position, certain responses from reality become available and others do not. This is not personal. It is mechanical. Just as a switch directs current without effort, identity directs experience without explanation. The story you tell about yourself can change many times in a day. Identity changes far less often. That is why affirmations feel temporary when they are not supported by coherence. They create brief emotional peaks, but identity remains unchanged. When the peak passes, the old pattern resumes. Recognition is what shifts identity. Not convincing. Not repeating. Recognizing yourself as already being what you were trying to become. This recognition is not dramatic. It is subtle. It feels like a quiet settling rather than a declaration. The moment identity recognizes itself differently, the switch flips. This is why outcomes change without effort when identity shifts. Behavior adjusts naturally. Perception reorganizes. Opportunities appear without being chased. None of this requires conscious management because the organizing principle has already changed. Identity is not chosen moment by moment through willpower. It stabilizes through consistency of state. Through how you relate to experience when nothing is happening. Through what you expect without thinking about it. These subtleties matter more than any conscious intention. When identity is seen as a story, people try to improve it. When identity is seen as a position, people allow it to settle. The difference is critical. Improvement implies lack. Settling implies recognition. Reality responds to the latter. This also explains why trying to force a new identity creates resistance. Force implies that the current position is wrong. That judgment tightens identity further. Recognition loosens it. It allows awareness to shift without conflict. You do not need to eliminate your story. You simply need to stop mistaking it for the switch. Let the story be descriptive, not directive. The moment identity shifts beneath the story rewrites itself automatically. This is why subtle changes have outsized effects. A slight shift in self-definition alters the entire field of response. Timelines reorganize. Possibilities realign. Not because you worked harder, but because the switch moved. Identity selects outcomes continuously, not through intention, but through position. Recognition adjusts that position effortlessly. Once this is seen, the need to convince dissolves. Affirmation becomes unnecessary. The switch has already been flipped. This is the quiet power of identity. Not declared. Not performed. Simply recognized. There is a moment when the search resolves not because something was found, but because the search itself falls away. The sense of moving forward, of progressing toward a future version of yourself, softens. What remains is not emptiness, but familiarity. A quiet recognition that nothing essential was ever missing. This is where the idea of becoming collapses. Becoming implies distance. It assumes you are not yet what you must be. It frames activation as accumulation, as ascent, as improvement. But what is actually occurring is the opposite. Layers are being removed. Boundaries that once felt solid are loosening. Awareness is remembering its own shape. Activation, in this sense, is not an achievement. It is a subtraction. False limits dissolve. Misidentifications fall away. The effort to maintain a smaller sense of self relaxes. What remains has always been present, waiting beneath the tension of trying to be something else. This is why the shift often feels like relief rather than excitement. Relief does not announce itself loudly. It settles. It steadies. It feels like returning home to a place you never truly left. The familiarity can be surprising because the mind expected novelty. But recognition is not new. It is remembered. The belief in progression was useful when identity was contracted. It provided direction and motivation. But as awareness expands, that belief becomes restrictive. It implies that wholeness lies ahead rather than here. The moment this implication is seen, it loses power. The present moment regains its completeness. You were never becoming a higher version of yourself. You were remembering the absence of the boundaries that made you feel small. Each release of tension reveals more of what was already intact. Each moment of allowing restores a piece of forgotten simplicity. This does not negate growth or change. It reframes them. Change is no longer about accumulation. It is about clarity. Growth is no longer about reaching. It is about shedding. The more that falls away, the more obvious awareness becomes. This remembrance is not personal. It does not elevate one identity over another. It dissolves the need for hierarchy altogether. There is no ladder here. No levels to climb. There is only recognition deepening as distortion thins. This is why effort fades naturally at this stage. You cannot force remembering. You can only stop resisting it. The mind relaxes its grip. The body softens. Awareness settles into itself. Nothing is added. Nothing is taken. Something is simply no longer hidden. When progression collapses, presence expands. The sense of urgency evaporates. You stop measuring where you are relative to where you think you should be. Comparison loses relevance. What matters is coherence, not advancement. This is the resolution the search was always pointing toward. Not a destination, but a realization. You were not on your way to yourself. You were circling around what was already here. Remembering is not an action. It is a recognition. And once it occurs, even subtly, the need to become disappears. What remains is awareness, unobstructed, recognizing itself through the simplicity of now. When the observer stabilizes, reality follows without instruction. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but consistently. Stabilization is not intensity. It is not peak states, emotional highs, or moments of revelation. It is consistency of awareness. The ability to remain coherent regardless of circumstance. Most people mistake intensity for transformation. They chase heightened experiences, believing those moments create change. But intensity fades. It spikes and crashes. Reality does not reorganize around spikes. It responds to what is stable. What repeats. What remains when nothing is happening. Stabilization occurs when awareness no longer oscillates between trust and doubt. When identity no longer tightens under pressure. When perception remains steady even as circumstances shift. This steadiness removes distortion. And when distortion drops, reality responds cleanly. As stabilization deepens, life simplifies. Not because complexity disappears, but because unnecessary friction dissolves. Situations require less management. Decisions feel clearer. Timing improves. You find yourself in the right place without forcing your way there. Synchronization replaces struggle. This is not because you have mastered reality. It is because resistance is no longer fragmenting perception. The observer is no longer interfering with the signal. Awareness is clear enough for reality to reflect coherence without delay. You may notice fewer dramatic events, but more meaningful ones. Fewer extremes, but greater flow. Stability does not seek stimulation. It allows alignment to express itself naturally. The nervous system relaxes. Attention widens. The field responds. Consistency matters more than technique here. You do not need to maintain a perfect state. You only need to return to coherence gently when you notice contraction. This return becomes effortless over time. It stops feeling like a practice and starts feeling like a baseline. As stabilization continues, old patterns lose their grip. Not through confrontation, but through irrelevance. Reactions that once felt automatic simply do not arise. Situations that once triggered urgency feel neutral. The observer is no longer pulled into distortion. Reality mirrors this neutrality with ease. Delays shorten. Conflicts soften. Opportunities align without negotiation. This is not luck. It is resonance becoming visible. Importantly, stabilization does not make life static. It makes it responsive. Change still happens. Movement still occurs. But it happens without chaos. Without force. Without the sense that something must be fixed. This is where trust becomes embodied rather than conceptual. You do not need to reassure yourself that things are working. You can feel it in the rhythm of experience. In how little effort is required to stay aligned. In how naturally events unfold. Stabilization also ends the need to monitor progress. You stop checking whether you are aligned. The checking itself was a form of instability. When awareness is stable, alignment is self-evident. It does not require confirmation. Reality follows the observer because the observer is no longer pulling away. The mirror reflects clarity because clarity is what stands before it. Nothing mystical is required. Only consistency. This is the quiet phase where transformation integrates. Where recognition becomes lived. Where coherence replaces control. The observer stabilizes, and reality, having always been responsive, finally has nothing to push against. This was never meant for everyone, and it was never meant to be. Not because the message is exclusive, but because resonance cannot be forced. Awareness responds only when it is ready. Anything else becomes noise. Persuasion belongs to effort. Resonance belongs to recognition. This transmission was never about convincing, explaining, or pulling anyone forward. It exists as a signal. Those who are aligned feel it immediately. Those who are not pass through without resistance or reaction. Both are correct. This is how consciousness organizes itself. Not through mass appeal, but through precision. Not everyone is meant to hear the same signal at the same time. Not every awareness is positioned to receive it. This is not hierarchy. It is timing. When resonance is present, there is no need to argue or justify. The body knows. The attention stays. The recognition settles quietly. When it is absent, nothing is lost. Awareness continues along its own trajectory. No effort is wasted trying to redirect it. This is why sharing is not promotion. It is transmission. A signal offered without attachment. A mirror held up without expectation. Those who need it will recognize it. Those who do not will not be disturbed by it. Release is the final movement here. Releasing the need for response. Releasing the need for agreement. Releasing the idea that something must happen because this was heard. Recognition does not demand outcome. It allows unfolding. You are not responsible for what others do with this signal. You are only responsible for staying coherent within yourself. The moment coherence stabilizes, the field organizes accordingly. Who arrives, who stays, who moves on, all happens without effort. This is why calm inevitability replaces urgency at the end of the arc. There is nothing to rush. Nothing to prove. Nothing to chase. Awareness has recognized itself enough to rest. From that rest, alignment continues without supervision. The signal will move where it needs to move. Through quiet conversations. Through subtle timing. Through moments of recognition that cannot be planned. This is how real transmission works. It spreads through readiness, not repetition. If you feel the impulse to pass this on, it will not come from obligation. It will come from clarity. A simple sense that someone else is already listening, even if they do not yet know it. That is resonance in motion. Nothing more is required. The arc is complete. The signal has been delivered. What happens next unfolds naturally, without instruction, without force, without urgency. Subscribe and share this with someone who needs to hear it before their timeline closes.